Imagine a country where roughly half the population is under the age of 18, a place born right here in the 21st century, sitting on top of massive oil wealth and the paths of ancient sweeping wildlife migrations. And yet it's a nation that is still fighting every single day for its very survival. It's a place of breathtaking beauty mixed with profound, staggering hardship.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the awe-inspiring landscapes and the incredibly complex realities of the world's youngest country, South Sudan. This isn't just a story about a line drawn on a map. It's an unfolding, real-life documentary of human resilience. We're looking at a nation attempting to build itself entirely from the ground up.
Chapter 1. The Youngest Nation, Born in the 21st Century. To really understand where South Sudan is today, we have to look back at the turbulent road that led to its birth. It was not easy. When Sudan gained independence back in 1956, the southern region, which was completely distinct in its culture, religion, and ethnicity, faced almost immediate marginalization. That tension eventually sparked the Second Sudanese Civil War in 1983, a conflict that dragged on for over 2 agonizing decades. It wasn't until a major peace agreement in 2005 that the stage was finally set for independence in 2011.
And that brings us to this incredibly heartbreaking paradox. In January 2011, there was this moment of euphoric, unprecedented hope. A staggering 98.8% of voters chose independence. The unity was palpable. But just a few years later, the devastation of a new civil war would displace over 4 million people. That beautiful initial unity at the ballot box was almost immediately tested by the tragic reality of the conflict that followed.
Let's move on to Chapter 2. A land of extremes, geography and wildlife.
You see, beyond the headlines of conflict, there is a breathtaking, cinematic landscape here. South Sudan truly is a land of extremes. Take the Sud, for example. Imagine flying over a seemingly endless expanse of swamp and seasonally flooded grasslands, all fed by the White Nile. It covers an area so vast that it's actually recognized as one of the largest wetlands on the entire planet. It serves as a massive, life-giving hub for hundreds of species of birds, mammals, and fish.
And then there's this number, 1.3 million. That is the number of antelopes, specifically the white-eared kobe and the tiong, that migrate through areas like Bandingilo National Park. This is a largely intact natural spectacle. We're talking about something that rivals the great migrations of the Serengeti, and it's happening right here, in a country most people honestly only associate with war.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, The Cost of Conflict, a Nation Divided.
It's tough, but we have to pivot from that sweeping natural beauty to the political and ethnic fractures that plunged this young nation into darkness. The Civil War's progression is just tragic. It kicked off in late 2013 with a massive political power struggle between President Salva Kiir and his then-deputy Riek Machar. That political rift quickly fractured along ethnic lines, leading to widespread, targeted communal violence. They did sign a fragile power-sharing peace deal in 2020, but the situation is still incredibly delicate. Even recently, in 2025 and 2026, we've seen renewed clashes, ceasefire violations, and intense violence in states like Jonglei and Unity. The peace process is walking a tightrope.
400,000. I want you to just let the gravity of that sink in for a second. That is the estimated number of lives lost to this war. Behind all the political maneuvering and the military posturing, there are hundreds of thousands of individual human tragedies.
Chapter 4. The Resource Paradox. Oil-rich, but cash-poor. This leads us to a baffling economic puzzle. How does a nation with such immense natural wealth remain one of the least developed countries on Earth? Well, the data reveals an extreme, almost absolute reliance on a single resource. Oil makes up over 90% of South Sudan's state revenues. They hold the third largest oil reserves in sub-Saharan Africa. But here's the catch. They're landlocked, so they have to rely entirely on pipelines running right through their northern neighbor, Sudan, just to export it. When political disputes pop up, or if war damages that infrastructure, their entire economy basically grinds to a total halt. And the economic fallout from that is catastrophic. Back in 2016, inflation hit a mind-blowing peak of 380%. That's not just a bad quarter. That is absolute economic collapse. Millions of families had their purchasing power completely wiped out. People literally couldn't afford basic food, which triggered massive, ongoing humanitarian crises and localized famines.
Chapter 5. A Resilient Culture, Identity, and Youth.
But a country is so much more than its conflicts or its economy. We have to bring this back to the people. Because despite unimaginable hardships, there is a vibrant, incredibly resilient culture here that survives. South Sudan is a rich tapestry of humanity. The demographic landscape is made up of over 60 distinct ethnic groups and languages. You've got the Dinka making up about 40%, the Nuer at 20%, the Azande at 10%, alongside dozens of others like the Shuluk and Bari. This incredible diversity is absolutely their greatest cultural asset, even as it has unfortunately been manipulated as a fault line during the war.
Navigating that dynamic between national unity and ethnic identity is really complex. Activist Achol Jokmak captured this perfectly when talking about her experience in the diaspora. She said, "I was only ever told, you are South Sudanese. It was only much later that I learned I was Dinka." It's a really powerful reminder of how the dream of one unified South Sudanese identity often collides with these deeply rooted ethnic heritages.
Yet, through it all, culture remains a massive unifying force. Traditional wrestling matches turn into these huge celebrations for the harvest season, complete with drums and dancing. There's an incredibly vibrant music scene. Artists like Emmanuel Jal, a former child soldier turned international hip-hop artist, have taken their message of peace to a global audience. And sports? South Sudan has made a massive impact through basketball. Legends like Manute Ball and Luol Deng paved the way, and the national team even made an incredibly inspiring debut at the 2023 FIBA World Cup.
Which brings us right back to perhaps the most important statistic of all, 50%. Roughly half of South Sudan's population is under the age of 18. This demographic reality is literally the ultimate blank slate. They are a generation born into independence, a generation that has the potential to completely redefine what it means to be South Sudanese. Ultimately, the big takeaway from this explainer is that South Sudan's story is still being written right now, and its youth are the ones holding the pen. With half its population under 18, will the world's youngest nation overcome its turbulent beginnings to forge a unified, prosperous future? It's a real-life cinematic story of survival, and it's one that absolutely demands our attention.